Hello YouTube, as you can see I have an interesting background now. It's the reserve that my place looks over, and I've decided to make a little explanation of current scientific understanding of um, cosmology. And I've got two really good books from the late 20th century, the 1990s. This book actually being 1994, which is Black Holes and Time Warps, Einstein's Outrageous Legacy by Kip S. Thorne, and it's 1994, and it's foreword by Stephen Hawking, and The Elegant Universe by Brian Greene, which is 1999. Now, I personally think anyone who wants to assert that the universe could not come from nothing really should, at the bare minimum, read these two books. Each represents effectively two different strains of thought as to how the universe could come into being. Now, a lot more advances have happened since the late 90s, of course, on these theories, but the two basic theories to explain the universe are theories that assume that energy had to be pumped into the system, like in M-theory, which is what the Elegant Universe is all about. And in that theory, you basically got an 11-dimensional universe where two brains come together, and in the collision of these two brains gave birth to what we call the Big Bang. Now, it's an interesting theory. It's not my preferred theory. My preferred theory is effectively the other sort of camp where you assume that the universe has actually net zero energy. This might sound strange, but as everyone knows, the first law of thermodynamics being conservation of energy, which is, of course, energy in all its forms cannot be created or destroyed, however it can be transformed. And there are forms of energy with negative values. So gravitational potential energy, for example, is a source of storing negative energy. So if you do a general relativistic treatment, it looks like you can probably actually determine the net energy of the universe is zero, which means something came from nothing, because you got something from negative something, and the two together combine to nothing. So the proposition that you cannot actually create the universe from nothing looks like it's quite frankly wrong, and that's my preferred interpretation. All the evidence we have to date matches this theory. M-theorists, well, the problem with cosmology is, of course, the orders of magnitude difference you can get, so we're not 100% sure that it sums to nothing, but it is certainly thoroughly consistent with all observations that the net energy of the universe sums to nothing. And when you take that into account, it kind of leaves you the idea of, well, alright, where did the universe come from? What caused the Big Bang? And since I'm biased towards this particular interpretation rather than the energy had to be put into the system interpretation of, for example, M-theory, I'll explain what I heard in a really interesting physics colloquium. Now, for the record, I've actually done my honours dissertation in physics on CP violation. Now, CP violation is all about how you can get matter from energy. So, when energy can be converted into matter and antimatter in a sort of similar method of, you can get negative something and positive something, and therefore the two sum to nothing, but you've actually got two lots of something in some form. And I'm probably going to lose lots of people on this, but the important point being that you could start with just a small bit of space-time, and that small bit of space-time will actually generate negative energy. That negative energy has to be compensated for by the creation of positive energy stuff, like matter and antimatter. And then through a CP violation, which is charge parity violation mechanism, which is already established in the standard model of particle physics, you can actually result in a net gain of mass, as in matter will dominate because of the decay chains that result. And that way you can convert nothing into negative stuff and positive stuff that sum to zero, and then the positive energy can be converted into an excess of mass, because you've got to remember that only about 10 to the minus 9 of all the energy in the universe is actually in the form of matter. And there's still absolutely massive amounts of the stuff in the universe, because the universe is incredibly big. But all it takes is effectively for a parent universe to have a little chunk of it cut off, say, by the collision of several black holes, and then that little chunk of space-time will actually naturally progress into an entirely new universe of its own. So the Big Bang is basically just a little scraping of a parent universe that undergoes its natural process to go through the inflationary period, which separates out different aspects and leads to our universe as it is, or universes in general. And it's a really amazing theory. And if negative energy can be made in a sufficiently dense form, you can actually sustain wormholes. Now, wormholes are really, really amazing stuff because they would breach causality, which means that the ultimate first universe, I suppose you could call it, could actually be the source of its own self, because its future self will go back in time to establish its own little chunk of self that expands into itself, which violates causality and can give you a headache, but it means that you don't actually need a sentient being to create the universe, because the original universe, which might very well be our universe or might not be, can actually have causality violated if that particular universe has negative energy particles that are dense enough to actually keep the throat of a wormhole open. And of course, if you can actually establish a wormhole, then you can actually go back in time, and this is where the debate about causality comes in, whether it is even possible to establish the throat of the black hole, the throat of the wormhole being kept open so that you can travel back. But this is just standard general relativity. If it can be done, because you have a sufficiently dense negative energy form, then it can be done, and as I said, we know that negative energy exists. It's basically what you call dark matter and dark energy. Then a universe can create itself and a whole myriad of alternative little baby universes. And I think personally, from a scientific point of view, that's where I believe the universe came from. Now, all the evidence that we have supports that belief, but of course there are other alternatives. And it's not like the theory of evolution, which has rock solid, serious evidence to back it up, because we haven't managed to do sufficient testing yet. It's still a fairly weak theory, unlike the theory of evolution, which is a very, very strong theory since it's constantly supported. But it does mean that you do not need a deity to create the universe, because you can create something from nothing, because you create stuff and negative stuff, the two combine to form nothing. But nothing can be separated into stuff and negative stuff, i.e. into our universe. So that's my personal understanding of cosmology as a physics student, and like I said, I've studied CP violation. I understand the basic mechanisms as well as pretty much anyone could really hope to understand them given our current level of knowledge. And I mean, this is why I find physics so fascinating, so really wonderful. And so yeah, you can technically get something from nothing if you create enough negative something to compensate for positive something you've created. And of course you can go back in time to create yourself, at least in theory at the moment. Ooh, freaky, hey YouTube. But there you go, that's a possible explanation and my personal opinion as to the explanation of where the universe comes from. And yeah, I'll try and make more videos on a more regular basis. Talk to you later, YouTube.